I have my back turned to half the audience half the time. So the sort of the alternate title for this thing is, how to succeed at DXing on a limited budget on a small station in a HOA community. So where do I advance it over here?
Yeah, you just hit the space bar to the right.
So those are some cards. Those aren't all my cards. Those are sort of my favorites, and they're on a bulletin board that I get to look at as I'm sitting in front of my radio. So how many online or here are focused on DX? Doesn't have to be your only thing, but how many are counting cards and getting excited when they get something thousands of miles away? So you guys are commissioned as alternates, presenters. When I stammer, you fill in, or when I don't make myself clear, you fill in. So I've been licensed for a long, long time as a kid in Chicago. And I'm always kind of proud of myself that my parents weren't hams. I had no relatives that were hams. Nobody pushing me or pulling me. I just got excited about it and did it on my own. And had to go to, had to go to the testing center in downtown Chicago and talk to an official FCC guy to take the test. A little more intimidating than it is now. In fact, when I got there, I don't know, I got there on a Tuesday, and he says, "Oh, we do ham testing on Mondays." Well, I just rode the train for an hour to go here. And he said, "But we're not that busy, so we'll accommodate you." So that was, the FCC became my friend. A few years later, I went to college, and then I got a job in Arizona. And when I went to Arizona, I got a new call sign. And, but I never really got a station going for a lot of reasons. I was really trying to succeed at my new job and build a family and all that stuff. After about 8 years, I encountered a couple guys at work that were rabid ham guys, and they persuaded me to get back on the air. So I did. This was during the days that there was no HOAs or any of that stuff. So I just decided to put up a small tower, and I put up a small tower and didn't make a fuss about it. And it was easy. And 1978 was the top of one of the sunspot cycles. So I kind of blundered into hamming again when things were red hot, and it wasn't hard to make DX contacts. So fast forward the clock to 2001, I moved to Colorado. Didn't have anything on the air, didn't intend to get anything on the air. Again, really buried in my new job. Tiny yard with an HOA. But a few years later, I retired. I resumed radio. I got my extra class, new call sign, but with modest expectations that with a mediocre antenna and 100 watts, what was I going to be able to work, and what kind of, was DX at all possible? We're tracking. Anybody online? So the most offensive part of an HOA is no antennas. And so I went to work on hidden antennas in the garage attic was where I started. And I had both a dipole up there and a loaded dipole and a loaded vertical. And I had some success with it. I worked mostly FT8 after flubbing around with sideband for a while, not getting a lot. I learned that, we could have a long discussion about antennas, and this is not an antenna presentation, but antennas inside an attic or inside a building, in my opinion, isn't very effective. Contrary to that, I talked to one guy one time about a year ago. He had a wire antenna strung on the second floor of his house and had some spectacular results. So I guess he was blessed and I wasn't. I don't know. But I concluded that I had to get outside to have any success. And how could I go outside without getting the neighbors spun up and getting nasty letters from the HOA? So that's my current radio, an FT DX10. It's a little bit over $1,000, which $1,000 is a lot of money, but in the world of radios, it's not a lot of money. You get into multiple thousands easily. So this is the antenna I have up and what I'm using. I have a few trees in the backyard that are about 40 feet tall, and they're strong enough to support a wire antenna. And when the leaves are on the trees, it's relatively hidden. So it looks a lot like a dipole, but it's fed with open line. The problem with, you can have a fan dipole that has a wire for each band. That gets to be hard to tune and hard to
I'm sorry, I can't see that far.
yeah, hard to and you need a lot of support for all those wires. This is showing a short coax. My yard, it's not so short, it's 100 feet. The tuner is at the base of the antenna, so it's a remote tuner. There's no amplifier, there's a transceiver, there's a 4-to-1 balun to bring this thing down to about 50 ohms that the tuner will be happy at. And I've been very happy with this antenna.
Thank you.
Everybody's doing coax fed antennas these days. That seems to be the standard. But and ladder line has a problem. If you get it near some metal, like gutters or structures on your house, it can perform poorly. So in my case, the ladder line is out in the back of the yard, a reasonable distance away from the house.
So you're feeding it on a ladder, not on coax?
So these are the two wires.
Yeah.
That's the ladder line.
Yeah.
And it's supported by a tree and a different tree at the other end and the garage at the other end. And, no radio these days is going to match up with a 400 ohm antenna. So you have to drop the impedance using a balun and then remote tuner. The tuner's at the base of the trees down here somewhere. And it tunes up on pretty much all the bands. And it's pretty reliable and not very visible to my HOA and my neighbors. So that's the tuner. This is in the shack, and that's down at the bottom of the tree, which is shown here. This is my house. This is my yard. Tiny little yard, maybe 20 feet deep. These are the trees I talked about. One end of the antenna's over here and the other's over here. And I rolled the dice, am I going to be successful? I got to spend several $100s to buy that thing. And this time it worked out.
What is that? Is it a manual or automatic?
Automatic. So it does a decent job of remembering frequencies and settings in the tuner, but not always. Sometimes you hit a certain spot on a band where SWR is high, and I can't explain why here, not there. So at that time, you push the magic red button over here
The auto tune, that's.
and force it into an auto tune cycle. So as soon as you start making contacts, you want to get confirmation. I mean, there are people that don't care about that stuff, that they're perfectly happy to talk to somebody, and then there's a lot of us who want some wallpaper and some proof of what we did and start chasing awards. Some stations still do paper QSLs. You go to the mailbox and there it is. This card from Botswana saying you had a contact, ain't it great? But that's a minority these days. Most of the stations are using Logbook of the World. This is a ARRL contact matching system. You send them, here's my list of contacts that I've made. The other station sends in their list of contacts they made, and they match them up. And when they match, you get credit for that contact. There is a function out there called Club Log. Club Log is a way, in addition to Logbook of the World, it's another way to cause the remote station to send you the QSL. And you have to enter the exact time of the contact and date of the contact, and it says, voila, you match. And now send us your $5 and we'll send you a card. It works well. I don't see it making mistakes or being ultra confusing or something. It's a good ingredient towards getting the confirmations you want. Your payments have to go through PayPal. So if you're scared about PayPal, security risk, they're going to drain your bank account. Well, it's one of in many ways you're vulnerable to such things, but I have not had any problems. I found it to be reliable. So
what's the $5 gets you?
So put yourself in the shoes of a DX station. If propagation is good, they can sit there in an afternoon and knock out a couple hundred contacts. I mean, there's no conversation. It's just you're 599, I'm 599, love you, bye. But they're just knocking out. If they had to pay their postage rate to send out all those cards, it would be a boatload of money. So we're the well-off Americans get to help them with that problem, and that's where $5 goes.
So are they still sending you a card, or are they just confirming with Club Log that they contacted you?
Either way, an awful lot of them are Logbook of the World only. Some of them will do both. If you click the right button on their screen, you'll get Logbook of the World and a card. The card will probably be many months later because the mail is slow and somebody's sitting down with pen and ink, filling out cards takes time.
So does Club Log have something going on with Logbook of the World?
have this exchange with the remote station on club log. That, and you send them, your electronic $5. You go on the fast list, and typically within a month you'll have logbook of the world. So
Okay.
it's not hardwired logbook of the world, but causes the remote station to send in the QSL information.
So it encourages them to log into Logbook of the World and get it done.
Yeah. And the last thing they want is thousands of cards from thousands of Americans. They got no use for the cards. It's just a nuisance. They fill up a bunch of shoe boxes and eventually throw them away. So that's Logbook of the World, one of the screens. This is the primary screen. I go down every morning and bring this up to see if anything new is trickled in. And see, there's a mixture of international and U.S. stations. It's all the same to them. So things I already said. Postage and the manual effort of filling out cards just discourages these high volume DX stations. Imagine you played radio for 2 hours and now you got 500 cards to fill out. You wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. Setting up a Logbook of the World account is a little complicated. It's mostly complicated because of security. They want to know that you really are who you claim to be. That, somebody else isn't spoofing using my call sign, or I'm not spoofing using somebody else's call sign. So there's a little bit of a handshake that goes back and forth to create your account. But it's the right thing to do. If you don't do that, you're going to miss out on a very large percentage of your QSLs. So I encourage everybody to do that. Those small percentage of people that don't do Logbook of the World, but they do paper QSLs. So right now I'm sitting with almost 200 online and about 10 paper cards that's not online. So when I want to, I find our local card checker and take my 10 cards to him, and he looks at them and signs off that they're for real, and then they get added to Logbook of the World. It's a bit tedious because the nearest guy for us is down by the airport, further south of the airport. So it's half a day to do this. You got to drive there, drive back, and spend an hour with the guy yakking about all the fun radio stuff you've done. But it's worth it.
So you're saying there's a local person who has sort of taken this on, and they physically inspect your cards and verify somehow into LOW that you're legit, your contacts were legit.
Yeah, I mean, it's just old school. They just look at the card and look for obvious omissions or errors on the cards. And if the card looks legit, you got it. There's no other complicated proof. But when you get close to your 100 country DXCC and you got 95 on Logbook of the World and 5 paper cards, the excitement is such that it's worth the trip, the long drive and back again.
Where was this person?
Me?
No, it was the card checker.
Card checker person.
I don't have his name with me. If you go on the ARRL website and search for card checkers, up will come this list of every state's got 3 or 4 card checkers. Look for the one for Colorado.
And he usually shows up at Hamfest as well.
I've seen them sometimes, yeah. So that's the relatively simple part of how to get confirmation in modern ways of online rather than big stack of cards. Back in the 80s, when I got my first DXCC, it was a stack of cards. So I mailed in 100 cards to ARRL and say, oh, please, 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 I hope that they don't get lost. They didn't. They sent it back to me. Logging software. Logging software is really a misnomer because it sounds simple. Like I just talked to W1ABC, pushed a button. It records that I had this contact with the frequency and the mode and a few things. That's only the tip of the iceberg. Most of these things are better known as, should be better described as multi-function radio control things, software. Some are specialized for contests, some are specialized for things like POTA. You know, in those environments, you typically don't have internet. And so all the business of them looking up who this guy is and what state he's in, none of that can work without the internet. And those things are intended for high speed. I'm not high speed, but you know, some guys are knocking out a contact every 20 seconds. So there's no time for fumbling around and manually entering information. So they're meant for high speed operation. So comprehensive operating aids, radio control. Almost all modern radios have they can make a connection to your computer. You can load the right software on your computer and it can control your radio. The one I'm using does exactly that. You know, you click on the computer and your frequency and your mode is changed to whatever you want. You know, you don't have to fumble around with these obscure and slow push button things on your radio. They track DX you've worked. So if I hear a station and I enter that call sign gets entered in, the software will tell me if it's a dupe or not. If I've worked this guy and if I've worked that country, and if I work that country in this mode, CW or sideband or FTA. So you don't waste your time contacting the same guy 10 times or encourages you to keep browsing, looking for a new one. Beam heading, it'll tell you how to point your antenna if you have a rotatable antenna. And, you know, it does the basic arithmetic of what is the short path and the long path. And, you know, sometimes it's east to west and sometimes it's over to pole. This is my favorite function. There's some big stations out there that, and there's a lot of them that support the DX cluster thing. So these are guys with big antennas and a lot of money, and they're posting to the central coordination site what DX is being heard. So you want to pick one of these that's close to where you live, you know, somewhere close to Colorado. But they're scattered all over the world and all over the US. And they will list what DX is on the air and what band and what frequency. And, you know, compared to sitting there, spinning your dial, looking for something exciting, and, you know, those guys are only transmitting about half the time. So you could scroll right past something that's wonderful and not even know it. So this is a pretty amazing function. So some of the spots will also give you helpful information, like the guy's working splits. And frequently it's, where's he listening? Is he 5 up, 2 up? You know, sometimes the guy is wandering around listening And you don't know where he's listening at the moment, but it's really made a difference for me. So this is Logbook of the World, or I'm sorry, not Logbook, Log for OM. There's similar, this isn't the only one out there. There's a bunch of these things out there. Some of them you pay a lot of money for. This one's free. They encourage you to make donations, but it's free. So there's a lot in this screen. Over here is what I was just describing. This is all the DX that Superstation is hearing right now. And at the time that I made this picture, so you see there's quite a bit of good DX on there. It also shows a map of where that station is. Sometimes that map is useful. This is a Chinese station, so it's somewhere close to Beijing. But sometimes it's an island. And you learn a lot about geography, that where in the world is, blah, blah, blah island. Is it near Africa? Is it near China? Is it near, some European country? So the maps sometimes are educational. Now you know a little bit more about where blah, blah, blah island is, or blah, blah, blah country. The countries in Africa it's a pretty dynamic thing, every year or two they change names, or some country ceases to be and others take that piece of dirt. So this stuff is all filled in from when you double click on one of these guys. So you see I double clicked on BY1CY, and you configure it to use your Logbook of the World account to look up who that guy is and where is he. And it fills in all this information, the band and the frequency comes from over here. This tells you if this guy's a duplicate or a new one. So this guy's not a new one for me, but it's a new band. So I've worked him on 40, 17, and 10, but I've not worked him on whatever this is, 20 meters. So there's one award that you can chase, which is 1,000 stations, countries, by frequency and mode. So if I work that guy on 40 meters sideband, and then I work him on 20 meters CW, that counts as 2. So 1,000's a big number, but you get these multiplier effects at some of these stations. You can work them 3 or 4 times. And it all adds up. This is the information from the spotting stations. So the most basic thing is they show the call sign, the frequency. This stuff is comments by whoever entered this. If some of them are automated and some of them are done by the big DXers, that as soon as they hit a hot one, they send in a report to this station saying, I just worked, Botswana on 20 meters at this frequency in CW, and it's wonderful, and everybody gets to know about it. So sometimes, this is QSX. Sometimes they just say listening on, but QSX means he's transmitting on 0.9 and listening on 0.942. So sometimes there'll be folksy kind of comments in there about really strong, really good CW, blah, 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 great propagation, blah, blah, blah. Interesting. This is the dupes screen. You know, it shows, you know, so I double clicked on RU1A and this pops up saying you already worked this guy on 20 meters. This is most useful during contests when you're working stations, you know, rapid fire, you know, 20 seconds, hello, goodbye. And you forget if I worked this guy or not. And they get annoyed if you keep calling them again when you've already worked them. So keeping this one on the top of the pile during contests is very useful to avoid calling the same guy twice or 3 times or looking stupid. Splits. Mentioned splits. Split. Most of them, I don't know, maybe a third the DX stations are working splits. That means they're transmitting on one frequency and receiving on another. That's a way to get the big pile up moved off their own frequency so that when they decide to send, they got a clear channel. And all the guys are on a different channel competing, you know, calling repeatedly, climbing all over each other, you know. So splits is useful. And I said that sometimes in that middle of that screen, it'll say this guy's working so many kilocycles up. That usually means up frequency. There's very rarely that a guy works down frequency. And sometimes the guy will announce himself, you know, W1 ABC 5 up. He'll say that. Or in CW, he'll give his call sign and just plain up. They rarely give the frequency, but they'll, you know, you realize he set his call sign in a UP. That means he's listening up. Sometimes it's easy to find where they are. Sometimes they tell you they're 5 up or 3 up or something. Sometimes they don't. And then you got to try and wander around and find out where he's listening. And it changes, you know, those guys are usually wandering around trying to find a station they can hear. So it's harder. Most modern radios support splits. You got to flop open your manual and learn how to use it. Most radios have two or more VFOs, and usually VFO-A is receive and VFO-B is transmit. And there's a button somewhere in the radio that says run splits. And there's the vigilantes out there that if you send, this guy's working splits, and you don't push the splits button on your radio, you're going to get some of the vigilantes that come on and, you know, yell at you, 5 up, 5 up, 5 up. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed the button, I'm sorry. CW was dropped, 10 years ago as a license requirement. But it's still, for the best way to get through in a noisy environment. Most of my contacts, I'm not saying 90%, but probably 70% are CW. CW or DX is easy. Conversational CW is a lot harder. You contact some US guy, and he wants to rag you, and I've got 3 kids, and I've got this radio and this antenna, and you know, I'm so and so years old, and I got licensed in so and so year, blah 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 blah. And you don't know what he's going to say, so you got to be quick to keep up with him. In DX, it's pretty simple. Listen to the guy. The US station sends 599 to you, thank you, to you, and the DX replies with another to you. Thank you. And then he listens, and all the American stations climb on top of each other sending. And somehow or another, he picks up one of them. And so the DX station will then call the one he was able to pick out of the pileup, and he'll call the guy, WX0AA599, WXA000, will reply 599TU. And that's it. That was a bona fide legal contact suitable for county countries and getting cards and awards. So you got to be able to recognize your own call when it's sent. And sometimes these guys are pretty fast. These are not the speed demons, but they're probably pretty fast. So you got to be able to recognize your own call sent fast. So when he sends you, this is not the time to break into a panic attack and what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? You apply a reply immediately, 599TU, and he says to you, and life's good. Contact's complete. Push the enter button on your log screen, and you got it. Sending your call over and over and over again with a hand key is going to get really old. I've done it, and when it gets really old, you make errors, making it harder for him to recognize who you are. So most modern radios have a CW memory in them. I suggest you use it. You can go through some rigmarole to program that your call sign. Or if you're into conversational CW, you can put in, I'm 23 years old and I have 3 kids, or whatever it is. So there's my keyer, and there's my memory thing. Plugs into the back of the radio. I've got 3 memories that are programmed. I push a button and my call sign gets sent. It's a whole lot easier than trying to send your call sign hundreds of times. So learn how to use that, and things will be easier. We're currently at a solar maximum. I guess I'm unimpressed. The solar maximum back in whatever it was, 78 or something, was red hot compared to this one. QST and others have these glowing articles about, oh, it's wonderful, it's wonderful. It's all that wonderful. But today was good. Other days have been poor. But today there was some good ones on the air that I could hear. So 10 meters is really good in the daytime. 40 meters is really good at night. 20 meters is frequently good all the time. So in contests, you'll see everybody's on 10 meters and then all of a sudden it goes dead, and everybody's on 20 meters and then it goes dead, and everybody's on 40 meters and it's roaring. And, with these contests running all night, these guys are on 40 meters for 12 hours. And then they go back up to the higher frequencies when dawn arrives. So contests are fun to work. Sometimes you can pick up some good ones, some new ones for you, sometimes not. Bands are packed and guys are on top of each other, and you just scroll around trying to find one that you can recognize that there aren't 3 other guys on that same frequency. This is an old joke that I picked up years ago. Guy, target-rich environment is an Air Force thing that says there's lots of bad guys to shoot at. The software I was working on was described as a target-rich environment. There were so many defects in it that you didn't have to struggle very hard to find one and fix it. But anyhow, during the contest, there's a lot of guys out. All of a sudden, the clock ticks over to 00 UTC, and bam, bands are just wall to wall. Each one's got some kind of exchange. Some of them are dirt simple, like your country or your ITU zone or your age or something, just something really short. Some of them have a very long exchange, and I'm not good enough CW operator to handle those long exchanges. I mean, if the purpose is that both stations record their exchange, that, you know, I got this guy and his name is Fred and he's in Botswana and he's 599. I'm not that good. So I'm just a casual operator and I'm just trying to contact countries.
By recording, are you talking about like a Cape recorder or?
No, I mean, write it down in your log.
Write it down.
So there's loggers that have certain add-on features that you push a button and say, I'm operating field day, or I'm operating, I don't know, pick your favorite, you know, the Minnesota QSO party. And it comes up with a little auxiliary screen where you enter that data, making it easy and fast. Some of the contest loggers are really slick in that regard. They make it extremely easy, but they don't have a lot of other functions that people like.
So with your last bullet point there, you're not participating in the contest, you're just making a contact.
So I'm showing up on other people's logs, but I'm not entering my score. I'm not competing in this contest. I'm just picking up some countries.
You're the target-rich environment.
Maybe. Here's where it's a little discouraging. It gets harder. The first 100, there's lots of Western countries, you know, economically strong countries, countries that have lots of hams. It's relatively easy to get Spain. Spain has 10,000 hams, I don't know. England, you know. But once you got all those, now you got to dig deeper. You know, a lot of African countries, a lot of Asia that's harder to get. Just gets harder. I attended one of these presentations a couple of years ago, done by another person, and she said exactly that. It gets harder. She said, when you get above 200 countries, you probably need to put up a tower and a beam. She didn't state it as like an absolute, but, you know, it gets harder. You need something better. Or else drop it and move on and do something else. But you're, you know, you'd be disappointed if you think you can continue the same rate you used to. A couple new countries a week. Now you're lucky to get one new a month. So what's next for me? Tower and a beam is unlikely. Amplifier is unlikely. Before you would talk about more power, the first thing that we do is be able to hear the other guy. If you can't hear the other guy or you can't hear him well enough to make out what he's saying, amplifier is not really going to do you any good. Maybe minor good, but not a lot. So if I applied myself, I would go back to my CW training and improve my CW. I heard that ARRL is going to be offering a combo award, 100 countries and FT8, 100 in sideband, and 100 in CW to get this glorious combo award. I haven't seen anything definitive on that, but I'm looking for it. And POTA is always a way to have fun. This is a spoof on POTA, porta potties on here. What about clubs? We as LARC could create some mailing lists. And when you get a good one, or you hear the band is wide open, send a brief email to that list and alert all your buddies that, you know, this rare one is now on the air. Colorado, the Mile High DX Association almost went out of business a few years ago due to COVID primarily. It's back functioning. There's not much chatter on their email list. So I'm not sure if it's rising from the dead or returning to the dead.
Phoenix is halfway.
Go ahead.
Phoenix is halfway. It was rising and it's starting to go back down, so.
So, but then there's the big guns, and these are two of the big guns. Central Arizona DX Association. There's some expert operators down there. And Northern California DX Association is probably the biggest of the big. They sponsor a number of DXpeditions. They give some of their members, they cover some of the cost for their individuals to travel to these DXpeditions. They have some automated stations you may hear once in a while that, I don't know which the right term is, not spotting stations, that you think a band is dead, but you can hear it speaking from somewhere, and that's one of the things these guys is supporting. So it's a low power station scattered around the world. QRP. And if you hear them, then there's a pretty good chance that that band is open to that part of the world. And that's my story. So I didn't do all this stuff like in one sitting or in 1 month, you know, it was spread across years. So, you know, don't try to eat the elephant in the meal. You know, it's
So what's the total length of your antenna?
60 feet.
60 feet?
It's a 40-meter dipole, except it's fed with open line and a remote tuner.
Are you running it straight out or are you doing a corner?
It's pretty straight. There's a little bit of a inward cant on it, but not a lot. And you know, the more straight you are, the better you're going to get. The better it's going to perform.
Unless you're making a reflector, corner reflector. Sorry.
Yeah, some more complexity like that.
I lived in Chicago in an apartment that was over a realty office. They had no idea what I was doing on the roof, but I was making corner reflectors to bounce over the lake. This was back in the late 70s when we had.
So you were in downtown Chicago or close to it? Yeah, being close to a big body of water is a big deal.
That is.
It really helps.
It was a lot of fun.
Some of these DXpeditions, you know, they're on some tiny little island and their antenna is in the water.
St. Helena.
Yeah.
That's the you know, the be all and end all of DX contacts is St. Helena.
Yeah.
I'm interested in your dipole. You're feeding with ladder line, which has what, 400 ohm
400 ohm, yeah.
Impedance, but a dipole nominally has 75 ohm impedance. So you've got an impedance mismatch right there.
So that's what the Ballon does.
4 to 1.
Hey.
4 to 1 Ballon knocks down it's not exactly 50 ohms, but it's close enough.
I still got a question online. Somebody have a question online?
Question?
Yeah, Ed,
Yes.
so if somebody comes to the breakfast, you usually go to the breakfast and maybe you'd even give them more information.
Yeah. I don't want to dominate the discussion, but yeah, I'm always willing to pontificate.
And about the breakfast, it's every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. at the Hidden Cafe here in Longmont. So we meet there, guys usually have a table set up and it's a good group of people and talk ham or other things. So Don's usually there, Ed, so I've been there, Bob, you know, we all try to show up and sometimes different people, sometimes the same, but everybody's welcome.
So people trickle in somewhere between 7:30 and 8. The early arrivals and the late, just on time guys.
I had a question still about your antenna. So, how did you get it strung up in that tree? That looked pretty high up there. You get some kids to throw ropes up there? How did you do that?
Yeah, ropes is the answer.
Yeah.
I bought at least 2, maybe 3 push-up poles. You know, these are fiberglass poles.
Okay.
You know, it's like you extend it out and turn a little clamp and extend it out again and turn a little clamp. And the one I have that works the best for me and I'm happy with was they advertise it as how to put up your Christmas lights. And if you have hooks mounted on your fascia, you push it up and hook.
Okay.
Wrap it around that hook and move on and wrap it around the next hook.
I appreciate that because I've got lots of wire. I've got some fairly tall trees in my neighborhood. I don't have an HOA, so I'd like to give it a shot.
Yeah, so this,
Right now, I'm
you know,
pretty close to the ground.
it's, you know, put on your big boy pants when you do this because it's not going to work first try. You know, you usually put a weight on the end of this 1/8 rope and extend it up and find the limb that you like and kind of nudge it over that limb and hope that it doesn't catch in the limb and get jammed.
In the fall, when there's no leaves on the trees, yeah, okay.
And you hope that weight will be sufficient for it to come down to the ground. And once you got that, hook your antenna onto it, pull it up.
And your matcher, you got an antenna matcher or a baling close to the ground.
Yeah, so
This one, let's see.
so that's the 4-to-1,
This guy.
and that's a tuner. So this is
Okay, so it's a tuner.
that.
Yeah, all right. And it's at the base,
Yeah, so
so it's a remote.
yeah. So there's a function that's been in use for years of able to put DC signals onto a
For road
signal wire.
control or whatever.
You know, the two are, you know, some capacitors and so on block the DC for the antenna function transmitter, but that DC signal goes to the tuner, signals the tuner to tune. So that when you push this button, that little DC signal gets put on your coax and sent out there, and it wakes up the tuner to go through a tuning cycle. That's the same as almost all remote tuners, you know. And I worry about, you know, so I moved it aside, but I covered it with some material trying to make it a little more weatherproof. And so far it continues to work on some really cold days when the spec sheet says it won't work. It does work. And so far water hasn't gotten into this thing and destroyed it. So I guess I'm lucky.
And in water too.
And that thing is like $200 and some, so it's, it's a bullet to bite.
Your amplifier, is it a full, 1500 or,
I have no amplifier.
oh, I thought you had an amplifier there, sorry.
Yeah, this is a stock picture that
Okay.
I stole from somewhere else,
You just do 100 watts on all this.
so that's not there.
Okay.
Is it 100 watts?
100 watts.
Oh. That's an amplifier enough.
Like I said, I'd love to have an amplifier, but the first issue is, can I hear the guy? If I can't hear him well enough to discern when he's calling me, more power is just fun. And complexity and a way to spend a lot of money.
I wonder if we can modulate people's TV sets anymore. I don't think they're on that frequency.
Well, surprised about 1500 watts is it?
Everything.
When all the broadcast TV got moved to its new frequency, was
50 to 500.
Yeah,
Digital.
the antennas, or not the antennas, the TV sets that my neighbors had when I was a kid. They had no filtering, no selectivity.
Your TV.
They were, the TV manufacturer said, what's the big deal? Why would we care? Well, we care a lot when transmitting. And my really grumpy neighbor, my parents' neighbor, snipping my coax one night.
But we're probably not likely to experience that. People they're out of that band.
And the TVs have better circuitry these days, they have better selectivity.
And most people are on cable.
A lot of them, yeah.
Cable, no, they're on Netflix, Hulu, they're on everything else but cable. We're cheaper than cable sometimes.
Yeah.
Hey, anybody else got any questions? Thank you, Ed. Anybody online?
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with your logging software, Ed, I have one too, not the same as yours, and they all seem to be a little bit slow and ponderous to use because I don't see any way around typing in the other station's call sign, and then there's some mouse work to choose a RST out of the drop down and a few notes and things like that. So there's a little bit of administrative overhead, and I imagine yours is the same way. Is that true?
So when I double click on a station in that screen that's off to the right, that automatically populates the call sign field. So I don't have to do that.
So when you're using the DX cluster, you get that, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. But if it's just some random guy, you still have to input it manually.
That's right. If I just blunder upon some guy, some poder or something, I have to type it in. There's no magic there. And I don't care about recording, the signal reports. I'm lazy. No one seems to care. No, I've never been denied a QSL because I didn't properly record their signal strength. So I don't bother. But yeah, if you want to enter, this guy's really smart or this guy's really dumb, or, I really enjoy blah, 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 you got to type that in.
Cool. Well, thanks, Ed. Appreciate it. Anyone else got any questions, comments? No? Okay. Well, if nobody's got anything else, then thank you for attending the meeting this evening. Appreciate it. We see definitely some new folks, so thank you for joining us here and online. And everybody have a great evening, and we'll meet again next month. And keep an eye on the website and the emails and the newsletters. Like I said, I'm still looking for help on certain things. So whatever you can do, if you got a few cycles.